For 3 years, I took care of my wife, the woman I believed couldn't walk. I cooked her meals, carried her to bed, and built my life around her pain. People called me a hero, but I was just a husband doing what love demanded. Then one quiet afternoon, while washing the car, a splash of water hit her phone. The screen lit up with a message from my best friend. "Can't wait to see you walk again tonight." That single sentence destroyed everything I thought was real. My name is Ethan Barnes, 36 years old, an electrician born and raised in the quiet town of Maple Falls, Oregon. For most of my life, I believed in simple things: hard work, loyalty, and the kind of love that's supposed to survive anything. 3 years ago, my wife Clara was in a car accident that, according to every doctor and scan, left her partially paralyzed from the waist down. It broke something in me, seeing her that way. From that day forward, I wasn't just her husband. I became her caretaker, her nurse, her everything. I bathed her, fed her, lifted her from the bed to the wheelchair every morning, whispering, "We'll get through this." I fought insurance companies, hospitals, and bureaucrats who saw her as a number instead of a person. Everyone in town said I was a saint, the perfect husband. But perfect husbands don't exist. There are only men like me, fools who believe love can heal what reality already killed. Clara had once been the kind of woman who filled every room she entered. Bright, confident, always in control. After the accident, she changed. Or maybe I just thought she did. She spent her days scrolling through her phone, watching TV, and chatting with friends online. She said it helped her feel connected, even though she rarely left the house. Her physical therapist, Ryan Donnelly, visited twice a week. Ryan wasn't just anyone. He was my old friend. We gone fishing together, watched football on Sundays, and even worked side by side on some wiring jobs before he changed careers. He was charming, helpful, the kind of guy everyone liked. Too much, maybe. At first, I was grateful for him. He pushed Clara through her sessions, encouraged her, made her laugh. But as months passed, I started noticing little things, details that shouldn't have mattered but somehow did. Clara began wearing makeup again, light and natural but deliberate. She bought new clothes, tight-fitting dresses that made no sense for someone confined to a wheelchair. A box of perfume arrived in the mail. She said it was a gift from Gina, one of her girlfriends. Then there were the phone calls. Late at night, when she thought I was asleep, I'd hear her whispering, soft, controlled, almost tender. Once, I caught her laughing quietly, a sound I hadn't heard from her in months. When I asked who she was talking to, she brushed it off. Just April. She's having a rough time. Still, something about her tone unsettled me. It wasn't sadness or concern. It was intimacy, familiarity. Then came that afternoon. It was a warm Saturday, and I was washing the car in the driveway. One of those small chores that makes you feel like life is still normal. Clara's phone was on the porch table beside her wheelchair, screen facing up. I splashed water across the hood, and a few drops landed near her phone. The screen lit up instantly. A message appeared, one that froze me mid-motion. Ryan read hard. "Can't wait to see you walk again tonight." For a long moment, all I could hear was the sound of the hose hitting the pavement. My throat went dry, my pulse heavy in my ears. Walk again? Tonight? My first thought was denial, that it had to be a misunderstanding, a joke, something taken out of context. But deep down, I already knew. That text didn't come from nowhere. It came from the truth I had refused to see for months. Something inside me cracked that day. Not rage, not heartbreak, something colder. Instead of confronting her, I turned off the hose, walked inside, and smiled as if nothing had happened. If Clara wanted to lie to me, I would let her. But I would find out just how deep her lies went. I told myself I wasn't becoming paranoid. I was becoming precise. If they were acting, I needed a script of my own, proof tight enough that no lawyer, no manipulative smile could unravel it. So I started to gather evidence the way I'd gather parts for a job, methodically, quietly, and without emotion. First, the cameras. I bought 2 compact units that looked like smoke detectors and one tiny pinhole cam that could hide behind a bookshelf. I installed them myself, hands steady despite the nausea curling in my stomach. One faced the living room where Clara spent most of her days. The other caught the hallway that led to Ryan's truck when he parked outside. They hummed softly and recorded everything. The small gestures, the private jokes, the moments people only allowed themselves when they thought nobody was watching. Within days, the footage began to rewrite my world. At first, it was just small betrayals. Clara standing up to reach for a jar on a high shelf, bending awkwardly but clearly supporting her weight. Then, a night I will never forget. Ryan sat on the arm of the couch, his leg close to hers. She reached up, and he helped her to her feet. She stood fully balanced and walked a few steps toward the kitchen, steady and deliberate, as if she'd practiced it 1,000 times. She moved slowly, but she moved. I watched the clip too, 3 times until the room tilted. My stomach flipped. Denial had been a warm blanket I'd worn for months. That video ripped it off. But anger only came after I watched more. There was a clip of Clara on a video call with Gina and April, their faces lit by the glow of screens, and they laughed in a way that made bile rise in my throat. Clara said, with that casual cruelty that makes something like a coin flip sound like fate, "He's so useful. Why ruin a good setup?" Gina chimed in, voice light. "We've got everything. The checks, the therapy invoices. I handle the paperwork. You just keep the show on." April snorted, and they dissolved into giggles, the kind of laughter that seals a conspiracy. It didn't take rocket science to see the pattern. It was betrayal, yes, but systematic, practiced, and profitable. They had turned compassion into a cash flow. I needed more than videos. I needed the paper trail. That's when I moved on to her phone. I wasn't proud of what I did. I was desperate. I used a remote cloning tool, something I'd read about on forums where people fix phones for a living. It let me mirror her screen in my laptop the moment she unlocked it. It felt like trespassing, and maybe that's what it was. But the alternative was a life built on lies. Within a week, I had her messages, entire threads saved and time-stamped. Ryan Red Heart ran like a bloody watermark through months of chats, plans, whispers, and transactions disguised as therapy fees or consultations. There were transfers, small at first, then larger, sent to an account under the name of a business called Donnelly Wellness Services. The payments matched dates when Clara told me she had home visits, or when she couldn't bear to move. I traced one of the accounts and followed the digital crumbs. Shell companies, offshore routing, invoices that looked professional but pointed to P.O. boxes and burner phones. The money wasn't just changing hands. It was being laundered through a maze designed to look legitimate. My hands shook the first time I printed the bank statements. The columns of numbers looked like the blueprint of a betrayal. There was a transfer on a Monday for $4,200 labeled equipment rental. The same day, a deposit into Ryan's account appeared for $4,180. Slight discrepancies to hide fees, to justify gas and supplies. A dentist's net of excuses. Another payment later that month was for clinical consultation, routed to an account that, when cross-referenced, belonged to Gina Martinez. Gina. Her name had been a soft background in the footage, laughing, organizing, sitting in the kitchen like a friend. The paperwork suddenly made her look like a manager, the puppet master with signatures and permissions. When I watched a voicemail she left for Clara, cheery, efficient, I could almost hear the gears turning. The turning point for me wasn't just the evidence of infidelity. It was seeing how readily they had turned human catastrophe into a business model. Clara had been my wife. She had been someone I cared for when the world had dropped her. And yet she, and the people around her, had rewritten that dependency into a means of enrichment. I could have gone to the police immediately. I could have smashed the phone on the porch and demanded answers that very night. But Agent Carson had told me something simple and true when I'd finally reached him. You want this to hold up. Don't make it a spectacle. Build an unbreakable trail. So I did. I archived the videos with timestamps, duplicated the accounts, printed bank records, and backed everything up in 3 different formats and 1 safety deposit box under a pseudonym. I drafted emails to insurance fraud hotlines and found a contact at the state disability office. My world had narrowed to one purpose. Make the truth so clean it could not be swept away by charm or manipulation. By the time I sat down on the back step and let the dust settle, I had a folder heavy with the weight of what they'd done. I felt sick, yes, hollow and furious, but beneath that, there was a steady, cold clarity. I knew what I had to do next. I would not be the loud man in the street. I would be the man with documents and dates, and when the day came to expose them, there would be no room for spin. When I finally understood the scope of what Clara and Ryan had done, something inside me went very still. The old Ethan, the man who argued, begged, believed, would have stormed in, demanded an explanation, maybe even cried. But this version of me had seen enough lies to know that emotion only gave liars more room to maneuver. So I smiled. I kissed her forehead the next morning and said, "I might be working late this week." She smiled back, unaware that she had already lost. While Clara sat in the living room scrolling through her phone, I sat in my truck outside our house, building a case strong enough to crush them both. Every photo, every video, every financial record, all carefully labeled and stored in encrypted folders. I wasn't just going to expose them for cheating. I was going to burn the empire they built for my pity. That evening, I drove to the county office to meet Agent Carson, a friend I'd known from a few years back when I helped rewire part of the local police department. Carson had moved to the fraud division since then, a sharp, quiet guy with a face that looked permanently unimpressed. When I showed him what I had, his eyebrows lifted for the first time. "Ethan, you understand this isn't just a domestic mess," he said. "This is federal-level disability fraud. Insurance, healthcare billing, falsified therapy sessions. We've been tracking something similar. Your wife and her therapist might be part of a bigger ring." He leaned forward, voice low. "If you can get us something conclusive, a live confirmation, a confession, anything that proves she's mobile, we can move fast." And that's when the idea hit me. A trap, not to humiliate, but to confirm, to make the truth undeniable, even to her. Back home, I bought a cheap second phone and created a fake contact under the name Clara. Using details from her real text history, I crafted messages that would sound exactly like her voice. Desperate, impulsive, romantic. I sent them to Ryan. I can't keep lying to him. "It's time. Let's tell him everything. Meet me Friday night at your place. I'll walk to you." Then I waited. I didn't sleep much that week. Every sound in the house, the soft roll of her wheelchair, the chime of an incoming text, made my pulse spike. I watched her read the messages I had baited through Ryan's replies. She typed responses with shaking hands, deleting, rewriting. Friday came like a storm you see miles away but can't stop. She dressed differently that day, carefully, elegantly. She told me she'd be at a late telehealth session with Ryan. I told her to take her time. When she left, I followed, headlights off. She drove her adapted van, yes, the one I had custom installed with hand controls, straight to Ryan's apartment complex on Birchwood Avenue. I parked across the street. For 10 minutes, I sat there, watching through the windshield as she got out of the van. And then I saw it. She walked. No hesitation. No brace. No struggle. Perfectly upright, as if the last 3 years had been a play stage for my benefit. My hands clenched so hard on the steering wheel that the leather creaked. I waited until she went inside. Then I hit record on my phone, stepped out, and dialed her number. "Hey, honey," she said softly, a hint of guilt in her tone. "I'm just walking," I said. There was a sharp intake of breath, the kind that sounds like glass cracking. I crossed the street slowly, every step heavier than the last. Ryan opened the door first, his smile dying the second he saw me. Behind him, under the warm porch light, stood Clara. No wheelchair, no excuses, just shock frozen into her face. Neighbors peeked out from their porches, drawn by the tension in my voice. I raised my phone, still recording. "You said you couldn't walk," I said, voice shaking but steady enough for the mic to catch. Guess those disability checks were working better than the therapy. Ryan tried to step forward, but I cut him off. "Save it. I've got months of footage. Emails. Transfers. You've both been stealing from me, from the system, from every decent person who actually needs help." Clara's lips trembled. "Ethan, it's not what it looks like." "Then show me." I snapped. "Sit back down. Be paralyzed again. Go on." The crowd murmured. She didn't move. Her silence was all the confession I needed. By the time I got home that night, my phone was buzzing with messages, people who'd seen the video I posted. It spread faster than I imagined. Neighbors shared it. Local groups reposted it. Within hours, it was everywhere. The woman I once bathed, fed, and defended had become a viral symbol, not of tragedy, but of deceit. And yet, As I sat there watching her face on the screen, I didn't feel triumph. I felt something colder, heavier, because for all the lies I had exposed, I knew deep down, this wasn't over. The fraud ran deeper than her legs ever could. The video spread faster than wildfire. By dawn, it was on every local feed, headline, and gossip forum. Disabled wife caught faking paralysis and defrauding insurance. The thumbnail showed Clara's shocked face frozen under the porch light, my voice echoing off the street like a sentence being handed down. The internet was merciless. The same people who had once called me a saint now filled the comments with disbelief, laughter, and outrage. By mid-morning, detectives from the county's financial crimes unit had contacted me. They wanted the full evidence set, the recordings, the financial documents, the texts. I handed them everything. Clara's name, along with Ryan's, appeared in an official investigation summary within 24 hours. Subpoenas were issued for medical and insurance files. Their world collapsed at the same speed that mine had once done, but mine was quieter. Theirs was televised. Her family called. First, her mother, sobbing into the phone, begging me to take down the video. Then her brother, voice low and sharp, trying to threaten me with legal action. I hung up on them both. That video wasn't revenge, it was evidence. And no one was going to bury it again. For a few days, I thought it was over. I'd exposed them, the police were involved, and I finally slept without waking up to the sound of her voice pretending to be broken. But a week later, I received a notice from my bank, an overdraft alert. Confused, I logged in to check. My balance was zero. At first, I thought it was a system error. Then I checked Clara's account, the one we'd used for her disability funds. Empty. Ryan's business account, the one the police were monitoring, also drained. Every dollar, every cent, gone. Over $180,000 had vanished overnight. The transfers were split across multiple routing numbers, funneled through digital wallets and shell entities. But every trail, no matter how tangled, led to one name: Gina Martinez, Clara's best friend. The woman who'd sat in our living room, laughing over coffee. The woman who helped Clara organize her medical paperwork. I traced the emails. Gina had positioned herself as the administrative liaison between Ryan's wellness business and Clara's insurance claims. She had access to everything: accounts, invoices, personal data. She wasn't just cleaning up after them. She was orchestrating the entire operation. It hit me like a slow punch. The affair, the fake paralysis, the entire charade. It was all theater. Clara and Ryan were too self-absorbed to see it. But Gina? She'd built the stage, handed them their lines, and while they performed, she robbed us all blind. The moment I realized it, I called Agent Carson. Check the accounts again, I told him. You're looking at the wrong people. She's the one pulling the strings. He didn't sound surprised. We've had eyes on her, Ethan, he said grimly. But if you can get her to talk, anything on record, it'll seal it. So I did what I do best. I set another trap. I knew Gina volunteered at the local community center every Saturday, running financial literacy workshops. The irony made my teeth ache. I showed up unannounced, walking into the bright hall with my phone recording in my jacket pocket. She looked up from a table, clipboard in hand, her expression flickering for just a second. Recognition, then irritation. Ethan, she said, smooth as silk. You look tired. Everything okay? I didn't answer. You emptied my accounts, I said quietly. Her lips curled, not quite a smile. Oh, come on. You can't possibly think I checked the routing numbers. You use your nonprofit shell accounts. You didn't just steal from me. You stole from them too. I nodded toward the people setting up chairs for her workshop. She put down her clipboard and sighed, like a teacher correcting a slow student. You really think you're the hero here? You think any of you are innocent? Clara lied. Ryan cheated. And you played the martyr. I just took advantage of the ecosystem you all created. Her tone changed, colder now. You think I didn't earn it? I built this. I managed every form, every payment, every lie. You were all too busy performing your little tragedies to notice who was running the show. My jaw tightened, but I stayed calm. Say that again. She smirked. I built this. That was all I needed. Behind me, I heard the door open, and when I turned, Clara and Ryan were standing there. Both looked wrecked. Clara's makeup streaked, Ryan's tie askew. They must have followed me after the news broke about the missing funds. Gina, Clara snapped, voice shaking. You stole everything. Gina laughed. You really want to talk about stealing, sweetheart? You conned your husband. Fake paralysis. Cash checks under his name. You think anyone will pity you? Ryan stepped forward, fists clenched. Where's the money? In circulation, Gina said, almost amused. And unlike you two, I'm not stupid enough to leave fingerprints. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Clara's tears smeared into her foundation. Ryan looked like he was about to explode. And me? I just stood there, letting the phone in my pocket record every word. The next morning, that recording was in Agent Carson's inbox. Gina didn't show up for her next workshop. By Tuesday, her nonprofit's website was gone, her phone disconnected. But the recording, that smug confession, was enough. Warrants were issued within the week. As for Clara and Ryan, they were finished. Legally, publicly, personally. Their careers gone, their reputations ash. And me? I didn't feel triumphant. Just clean, like a wire stripped of its coating. Bare, functional, incapable of being shocked anymore. Justice, I realized, isn't about rage. It's about precision. And I had delivered it perfectly. 2 days after the confrontation at the community center, the story that had once been just mine became everyone's entertainment. The local paper ran the headline, Fraud Ring Exposed and Disability Scam. 3 arrested, 1 missing. By noon, Gina Martinez had been taken into custody at a motel 2 counties over. She tried to book a flight under a fake name, carrying a suitcase stuffed with cash, 2 phones, and a USB drive full of offshore account data. Agent Carson called me that night. We got her, he said simply. Your recording nailed it. The funds will take time to recover, but the case is airtight. I didn't celebrate. I just nodded, thanked him, and hung up. My body felt like it had finally exhaled after months of holding its breath. Clara's arrest came next. The charges stacked up like dominoes. Insurance fraud, falsifying disability records, and conspiracy to commit financial crime. The woman who once lived off sympathy now faced years in prison. Ryan, her partner in deception, lost everything in a single hearing. His license, his practice, his reputation. The board stripped him publicly, and the footage of him begging for a second chance played on the same local channel that once aired their charity events. As for Gina, she didn't flinch during her arraignment. She stood straight, hair neat, lips curled in that same quiet arrogance I'd recorded. They made it easy, she told the judge. I just organized the chaos. No remorse. No fear. Just the smirk of someone who thought being clever made her invincible. The prosecutors said the money would be tied up for years. Between restitution, seized assets, and legal red tape, I knew I'd probably never see a dime of it. But somewhere between the police reports and the court summons, I realized that it didn't matter anymore. The truth, the unfiltered, brutal truth, was worth more than anything they'd taken. I sold a house. The same house where I'd carried Clara from room to room, where I'd knelt on the floor begging her to eat, where love had turned into obligation and obligation into humiliation. I signed the paperwork in silence, watching the ink dry as if it were sealing a coffin. Then I packed up what little I had left, my tools, a few clothes, and 1 small box of photographs. I drove west until the air changed, until the scent of salt replaced the static hum of the city. I bought a modest house near the coast, a fixer-upper with chipped paint and a leaky roof. It was mine, entirely mine. The first few weeks were strange, quiet in a way I'd forgotten life could be. I worked during the day, repairing the house bit by bit, fixing what was broken, 1 nail, 1 wire at a time. It felt symbolic, almost sacred, like reclaiming the version of myself that had disappeared in the years I spent tending to someone else's lie. One evening, as I was unpacking the last box, I found a photo wedged between 2 books. It was from our wedding day, Clara in her white dress, smiling at me like I was her entire future. I stared at it for a long time, wondering if she ever meant any of it. Maybe she did. Maybe the person she was back then died long before the accident. I took the photo outside. The sky was overcast, the kind of cold that stings your fingers. I lit a match, and the paper curled instantly. The flame moved slow at first, then faster, devouring her face, then mine, until there was nothing left but smoke. I watched it twist into the night, drifting up into the dark like a ghost finally leaving a house it didn't belong to. They say love dies because of betrayal, I said quietly, my voice barely above the wind. But that's not true. Love dies from silence, from the lies we let live too long because we're afraid to face them. I ignored too many. The fire hissed out. Only the ashes remained, scattered across the wet concrete. I turned back toward the house. The ocean roared faintly in the distance, constant, unforgiving, and honest. Inside, I made coffee and sat by the window, listening to the storm begin to roll in. For the first time in years, I didn't feel haunted. The past was no longer something chasing me. It was something I had walked through and out of. That night I slept, not the restless sleep of a man waiting for the next lie to break him, but the quiet rest of someone who had finally burned his world to the ground and found peace in the ashes.